Hello, my friends. Welcome to New Kids with a Shop, brought to you by the Rcade Comics, Collectibles, and Games, located in a very wet and cold Fort Wayne, Indiana. I am Matt Cade.
And I am Craig Ray. And this is Creator Spotlight, Mark Russell. Hey, welcome back, everybody. Today we have Creator Spotlight with Mark Russell. We are joined by Shayne Pace as a co-host.
Hey, everybody.
For those of you that don't know, Mark Russell's comic book debut was in 2015 with the book Prez. He has multiple Eisner nominations and a 2022 Eisner win for the book Not All Robots for the Best Humor category, a 2019 GLAD winner, and he has an upcoming Kickstarter project, Bunk Bed Mishaps, which we'll get to that later. Thanks for joining us today, Mark. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
So we kind of kick everything off usually, and I don't want to have any exception here, with talking to our guests about their origin story, meaning how did you get into comics? Where did that love come from? And, you know, if you can, tell us the ages and, you know, the whole thing, the whole shabazz.
Well, my introduction to comic books, this will give you some idea how old I am, came with the supermarket spinner racks.
Oh,
that
yeah.
was really where I first met and, you know, sort of really liked comic books because I associated them with us going on vacation. We'd always stop at the spinner rack and I'd pick 4 or 5 comic books to take with me, or, you know, like just walking down to the local grocery store, and which was like as close a thing as I had to a library when I was like 10 years old. And the first comic book that I remember really sort of falling in love with was Mad Magazine. And I think it's had an impact on me ever since. That tends to be the way I all things being equal, I skew towards satire and humor.
Yeah, that definitely comes through, and it makes complete and total sense. So, and where did you grow up?
Eugene, Oregon.
Okay, so you're currently in Portland, is that correct?
That's right. That's as far as I made it in life.
Okay,
down the road.
That's cool.
From Eugene to Portland.
Cool.
What do you read what do you read for yourself, for your own mental health?
Well, I read a lot of comics, but beyond that, I also read. I make sure to read a lot of non-comics, a lot of nonfiction. I'm reading a couple really great books right now. One called Civilized to Death by Christopher Ryan, which is about the costs of modern civilization and about, you know, what we are likely to pay as a species in exchange for, you know, bacon wrapped things and hot tubs. And then also Nomad Century by Gaia Vince, which is about how over the next 100 years, due to climate change, we will basically become a species of migrants and refugees because increasingly large patches of the Earth's surface will become uninhabitable to humans. So we'll be moving around a bit. But yeah, they're both sort of fascinating looks at our world, and those are the kinds of things that I like to sort of draw my ideas for comics from. Comics wise, I'm reading. I'm finally getting around to reading Tom King's Love Everlasting series.
Fantastic.
Which is great. And I'm also enjoying Jeff Johns' Junkyard Joe.
Yep.
Yeah.
So good.
Which I really like a lot.
So did you like the format of Love Everlasting? Like, did you find it, like, you know, how you went through the first few issues and it's just these little vignettes, and did you enjoy getting there towards the payoff?
I'm not done.
Okay.
I'm in the middle of it, but yeah, I feel like I'm in good hands, so
Sure.
I'm okay with you know, formats that I'm not entirely used to.
Yeah, I subscribe to Elsa Chetier. I'm gonna butcher it, but her Patreon after reading the first few issues.
Yeah.
But what you just said.
Oh yeah, her work is great.
Oh yeah, it's elegant and beautiful. But that kind of so question number 4 on my list. There's in your work, there's this strong through line about the dehumanizing effects of late stage capitalism, like Flintstones, obviously Billionaire Island, and even traveling to Mars. But like Craig and I talk about this, is like the anger and cynicism, but then like the heart and the empathy are all like perfectly balanced, it seems like, depending on the project, and it's always appropriate to that. Is it hard to find that equilibrium, or does it just kind of come naturally?
Well, I feel like it comes naturally because it's just the way I sort of feel. It's just the way I I'm not entirely pessimistic. I'm not entirely,
And that's the hard part. It comes through that, like, you can tell you're just writing about it, and then you add the humor, but what always comes through, even more than humor, which is, I was going to bring this up too. Like, you've been nominated for all these humor awards, but is that only because there's not a heart award? Because honestly, that's the part that comes through to
I
me.
hope so.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, I'm not just some kid doom scrolling through. It's like I've got a stake in this planet. I want I want us to make it. I want the human race to survive.
We're one of the idiots that lives here. So yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And it's not that I'm writing about those meatheads who can't seem to get it right. I'm including myself in this. I mean, I enjoy bacon wrap things and hot tubs. The next person, but we gotta figure out how we're going to allow us to enjoy these things going forward. We're going to we need to figure out how to make the civilization work for everyone and not just the people who can currently afford bacon treats.
Sure.
So can I follow that up? Because you've said that your love for the character of Superman is genuine. Like, I don't know if you said he's your favorite, but you get his voice perfectly, and I think there's stuff that you see in him that he's like the perfect vehicle to kind of be a beacon of hope in like dark times. I just finished the Superman Space Age that came out this week, and I was wondering if you could talk about like what about Superman draws you and what you like writing about him about.
Yeah, he's my favorite superhero, and I think it's because he's such a glorious thought experiment. Like, if you had that sort of power, what would you do to fix the world? And I think him, he also forces you, if you're thinking, well, what would Superman do in this situation? You're thinking, well, what would somebody who is like probably the best person you've ever known do in this situation? There's a line in Superman Space Age where I think Wonder Woman sums up Superman perfectly, where she says, I've always admired you because you don't fight fire with fire, you fight darkness with light. And that to me is like Superman in a nutshell.
Absolutely.
It is.
That's Superman. I mean, it's really one of the things where it's very hard to articulate that, even though everybody knows. Everybody has that same feeling, I think, about Superman, and they make him feel the same way, but articulating that is the difficult task as far as like in having that shine through. But also, you can't just write that over and over on a page. You have to give him something to do.
You have to make it interesting.
Yeah. Right. So,
and I think that, what makes him interesting to me and what, are probably the same things that make him boring to other people. Because he doesn't just try to he's not just better at violence than the bad guys, which is, it's not just like Punisher or something. He leads by finding new ways to solve problems. And to me, that's the important thing. That's what's going to get us out of this mess and allow the human race to survive. If anything does, is that, we found new solutions to the old problems.
All right.
For sure.
I said it on the podcast a few weeks ago too. I look at it like if someone's getting mugged, a woman or a man is getting mugged in an alley, Batman sees it and says, I have to stop that criminal. Superman sees it and says, I have to save that person. Just kind of how.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, it's very succinct.
Shayne said you could use that in a book.
Okay, good.
All right.
And
I'll put an asterisk next to it if I steal it.
And I'm sorry. How did you hook up with Michael and Laura Allred for that project? Because it's so perfectly suited to the story that you were telling in that. Was that editorial, or did you guys seek each other out?
It was a little of both. When it got approved, Brittany, my editor, told me to, Brittany Holzer, told me to make a list of bucket list artists. Mm-hmm. Like if you could have anybody in the world draw this, who would it be? Don't try to strategize, think who you can actually get. Assuming you can get anyone on the planet, who would you do? And she said, and I'll do the same. And so we both made lists of artists we thought would be good for this. And Mike was the name that showed up on both of our lists. So he became our number one pick. And to me, this was like a moment of fate, because it's you never get your number one pick.
Right.
And the fact that he was the first person and only person that Brittany contacted, and he was on board.
Wow.
And wanted to do it is that to me. I just felt like the stars are aligning for this one.
I told Craig yesterday the thrill of seeing the Mike Allred Zatanna or the Mike Allred Hawkman. It was
cool.
Great to see those.
It's a different take
in the spreads,
but it's perfect.
But still so them. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, his 2-page spread in issue 3,
Yes.
where you see
Oh,
all the
man.
superheroes assembled like as the Earth is being destroyed. If I could have one thing from comic book arts to like the history of comic books to like have in my own possession, that's what I would choose.
That spread, and not to spoil it for anybody, but what a wonderful the heroes just refusing to stop, no matter how dire, no matter how impossible.
No, it is like that.
And you wrote a great Diana in that issue.
Oh,
too.
thank you.
Yeah.
Which you actually just touched on something I know that you were kind of, as far as Matt, you were into some of the industry stuff. So it sounds like that one in particular was kind of a mix, is, how the book came to be. Like, I know specifically, Matt, what you want to ask.
Well, I mean, I've always been curious on page rate, if you get back end deals, if you get money for if the run runs really long. How do the different publishers, how do you work with that? How does that work for you? Without telling people numbers. We don't need to know that, but I'm curious.
I don't want to embarrass myself. But no, it works differently by publisher. But you do, especially when you're working with the big two, get royalties on the things you've written.
Very nice.
DC, you tend to see more royalties, I think, on the trades, the finished products, whereas in Marvel, I think you tend to see more royalties on the issues.
Okay.
Individual issues.
And that helps
That's
us.
Just the way. That could just be me, but I think it's also the way that the contracts are structured.
Because it helps us too as we move forward when we talk to people. Like, we reached out because we love your work and we'd like to help you. I mean, if us pushing your trades is helping you, I mean, that's kind of the other angle of this question.
Yeah.
Like, if it's already a done deal, not to say we won't sell your books if it's already done deal, but it's definitely a motivator.
Yeah.
If you're seeing back end on that, so.
Yeah, absolutely. I see back end on the trades, and more than that, that's just usually the way I like for them to be read. I like for them to sit as a book.
Well, yeah, because you can read it in one sitting. You don't have to go through the issues. I understand that too.
Because in the store, even Space Age came out in the 3 individual volumes, and they were at $10. And we have a number of people that are just waiting for a few months to get the hardcover that's about 30, where that's where they're choosing to read it, knowing, your style and things like that. It's probably better just to have it all compiled. So that, like I said, we wanted that information because if we're going to sell that like hotcakes, it's good to know that you're going to see some of that. So,
well, thank you. I appreciate that effort. But yeah, in a lot of ways, I feel like that's kind of the par for the course of my career. Is like, Flintstones and Snagglepuss didn't sell a ton of copies on the shelves, but they did much better in trades.
Can I also?
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I really don't want to interrupt you. It's frustrating because Flintstones Part 1 in the soft cover is still in print, and Part 2 is not. And I don't know if that was. You have to get the library edition. As far as we're looking, unless you are you. So I'm going to ask you about that. Are there plans of putting the second half in soft cover again? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think my guess is both the soft covers are probably going to go out of print because they're going to be relying on the deluxe edition.
Yeah.
What I would like to do more than like get the soft cover of the second volume in print would be get a soft cover version of the deluxe version
of the entire book. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that is the way to read it, folks.
It really is.
Deluxe hardcover. It's a beautiful book.
How different is it between working with the big two than working like for your billionaires?
Ahoy. Yeah.
Yeah, Ahoy it's very different than working with the big two. For one, you're working with your own characters, so you get a lot more freedom. There's not much editorial oversight or people saying, Batman would never do this, Batman would never say this. They're pretty laissez-faire about, well, you tell us what's going on at Billionaire Island.
Right.
But the contracts are structured a little differently, so you don't see as much on the royalties, but you get a better page rate, which it's just they take care of you. I'm not complaining at all. Ahoy's been wonderful to work with, but it is a different experience than the big two, financially and professionally.
So with Second Coming, with that one being originally, I believe that was originally supposed to be a Vertigo DC book that was then too controversial to, be shown there, and then it made the switch over. So is that just a complete rewrite on the contract, or did you try to bring some of that over? Or I I know that are completely different legal entities, but you got used to the idea of it being done in this way, and then that could have completely switched over to a different contract structure. Like, is there any give or leeway there, or in that particular instance, did anything happen resembling the back end deal?
Yeah, they pretty much took over the Vertigo contract. The only difference was that they paid us again for a page rate for the writing and the drawing, but it was reduced because we'd already been paid once by Vertigo. So we got paid twice, but it wasn't like we got paid twice as much.
Did you just call that check second coming?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's
Okay.
That's second paying. But they also, were much more flexible on the terms of the publication itself. They brought in a second artist, Leonard Kirk, to do some of the scenes that were in the present, and let Richard focus on the scenes that are set in heaven or in the ancient past. And I think it gives it like a unique look. And also they allowed us to put more pages in. So like the original issue number 1 didn't have all the stuff with, Christ remembering his childhood and, his best friend who he left the carpentry shop to, which to me is really kind of the soul of that first issue.
Yeah.
And really sort of like a thesis statement for what this series was going to be like. It wasn't actually, none of that was actually in the first issue as it was going to be published in Vertigo. It was really only because we went with Ahoy that stuff was able to make it in there. And I think that's the advantage of going with publishers like Ahoy, is that you get to make a more boutique level crafted product. You get to make a book that's more true to your original vision.
Did you have to do any adjustments to Flintstones or Snagglepuss due to it being with DC?
Not really. They wanted me to. By they, I mean Hanna-Barbera. When I turned in the script for the first issue, I got a list of like complaints from Hanna-Barbera. Like, you don't mention any deities. Fred's got to say yabba dabba do once an issue. All these do's and don'ts. And I talked to my editor Marie and said, I don't know if I can work like this. And she said, well, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. And she was right. Like that was the last I heard from them. And I know that the editorial team did take some slack. They got some abuse, not actual abuse, but they got people got angry at them because of what they were doing, and they had to take the bullets for me while I was working on this series because it was so unlike what anybody was expecting. And, especially the Hanna-Barbera people.
That was the best part of it.
Yeah.
Did the success of Flintstones make Snagglepuss an easier sell?
Yeah, in fact, I didn't even have to sell Snagglepuss. Like I was just posting these weird sort of like dialogues on Facebook that like was Snagglepuss and Huckleberry Hound talking to each other like they were old Southern Gothic playwrights in this sort of very verbose purple language. And Marie apparently was reading it on Facebook. She just contacted me and said, by the way, your Snagglepuss comic has been approved. So I thought, well, then I better write a Snagglepuss comic. Yeah. But I hadn't even pitched it or anything. She just thought it would be a good idea.
How did Flintstones come to be? Was that your idea, or did they come to you and say, we want a Flintstone story? I am really curious about that.
They came to me because DC had just gotten the rights to the Hanna-Barbera stuff. So they were matching writers and artists with the different Hanna-Barbera titles.
Okay.
And they thought of me for the Flintstones because I had written Prez, which they thought was like, they liked, even though they canceled it, after 6 issues.
Sure.
They felt, I think, kind of bad about the fact that they had to cancel it because nobody was buying it. But they thought that voice would work well for the Flintstones because they thought this would be great to do sort of like a satirical sort of version of the Flintstones. And then go ahead.
I said we thank them for letting you do that because it is a great book.
It was out of the blue, but at the time I was a little worried because I'm not a big fan of the Flintstones, but they said, well, just make it your own. And that was all I needed to hear. It's like, okay, I will take this and run with it. I will write about the things I do like about the Flintstones and turn it into like sort of a meta commentary on the foundational problems with civilization as I see them, and God help us, for better or worse, that's what it will be. And Marie had the brain stroke of bringing Steve Pugh on, which I wasn't
fantastic work. Yeah.
But she thought that and I don't know how she made this leap, because he had never really worked on anything like that before. But I think it was because he did did some of the art on Grant Morrison's Animal Man, so she liked the way he drew animals. So he got the gig, and we've worked together like many times since then. He's like one of my closest sort of collaborators, but it was just a choice made in heaven for her to pick him to do the art for the Flintstones.
That's awesome.
And for anybody who's not read the Flintstones, again, that's where you thread that line of cynical versus heart, like, brilliantly. I ended up crying at the end of a Flintstones comic. So if that sells anybody on it at home,
that's a rare accomplishment. I'll take it as a compliment.
Well, I was reading it last weekend, and my wife took it out of my hands and then read the entire thing and then was gushing about it. So
it's fantastic.
It is.
I had one question related to that, because I had contacted you a couple weeks ago when we were having book club, and we did read Flintstones in book club, and I had like an observation. I kind of want to get your take on it. So the age range in our book club is late teens up to 40s, 50s, things like that. It's a wide range of people, and we read the book and then we get together and discuss it. And there was one interesting thing that happened, and that was, this book is deep, and half of the humor and half of the heart and all of that are like all the picket signs that show up all over the book. And there was the one in particular, God hates dads, right? So we have somebody that's 25 in the group that didn't get the joke because he was thank you. That's the question. Because it's that fine line of, I found it funnier because I was aware.
Yeah.
As compared to somebody has no idea where that sign came from. I mean, that's progress, right? And so, like, you're definitely writing at your age, but I was going to ask if you had a problem with, maybe younger audiences not even getting it because they're living in a post,
not getting it for the right reasons.
Right, not getting it for the right reasons.
Well, I write with my own sort of cultural biases and reference points. I can't be anyone but who I am, so I just write from like the background that I have, and I just assume that there are things in that.
No, and I found myself having to explain. Yeah, I
really don't know. And those things, people are going to have no idea what I'm talking about. So, I'm sure there's young people that miss out on a lot of the things I'm writing because it's too old for them. But there's probably also old people who miss out on it because the things are too young, or just people on the East Coast who don't get things that are specific to the West Coast. But that's okay. It's like I don't get everything when I'm reading something. I don't get all the inside jokes and Easter eggs, and it doesn't really reduce my enjoyment of it.
But I felt that one was a very powerful one, though. I mean, and I had assumed, which I was very happy that I was wrong, that everybody knew that the Westboro Baptist Church signs and all that stuff was just, it shows you that it's not cemented in culture. It's not going to be ever present as far as like, I'm happy that they were unaware. Like it was weird for me because I had to explain exactly what it meant. And it was like not, it's just talking about it as something that happened, but it's not. It doesn't make you feel good. But it made me feel good. They had no idea what I was talking about. It was great.
Yeah, and I think it also sort of demonstrates the fleeting nature of hate. Like these people, while they may grab the headlines and may have the biggest megaphone, they're pretty quickly forgotten because their message doesn't really have any substance, because it doesn't really have a foundation upon which to build anything anybody wants. So like Rush Limbaugh has been dead for 2 years. Nobody talks about him anymore. Nobody,
right.
It's not like people are still, quoting lines from his speeches or from his radio show. It's like he's utterly irrelevant, just a couple years after his death, because that sort of, anger, bullying based sort of philosophy has no basis in anything, substantial. So it's just, it evaporates as soon as the person screaming
Stop
shuts
screaming.
up.
Yeah.
I don't see Marjorie Taylor Greene getting a statue on the National Mall anytime in the next few. Can I bring it back to comics and ask one more nerdy question?
Please.
So with your DC stuff, which I love that I'm a DC guy through and through, and you've written such rich characters. But One Star Squadron, which was a great book, by the way, and you really won me back. I was like, Power Girl would never do this, but it's like we all get into situations. We all make bad decisions and we feel bad, and she did, and it was wonderful. But do you have an affinity for characters like Red Tornado and Power Girl, or did you just know they'd work for the story, or was it editorial?
Some of it was editorial. Like I had made a list of characters I wanted to be in the book, and editorial shot some of them down because they were being used in other books, or that for one reason or another I couldn't use them. So I ended up making the story from the cast of characters that were left. But one that I always wanted to have from the very beginning was Red Tornado, because I wanted this to be a story about, not only did I think he just looked awesome,
He
but
does
I
look
wanted
awesome.
this to be a story about sort of a machine being what he thinks is a good human, and about him sort of like being kind of the most humane character in the story. And I know that Power Girl would never have done any of that stuff, and I wasn't. It was really about like somebody making a temporary detour in their life,
right? And it's like we've all been there.
Yeah, she read some books that had like a bad influence on her, as we all have. We've all gone through phases, but then she remembers who she is. She remembers what it is, why it is she became a hero. And when in doubt, ask yourself, well, what is it I'm on the planet to do?
And it came across, and it was great. And following up on that, then, are there any DC characters that you would love to write for that you haven't gotten a chance to yet?
Yeah, I've always wanted to write for Green, like a Green Arrow title. Gosh. I think that would be
that
great.
would be
now
great.
I want that more than anything,
especially with your commentary. It would be fantastic.
Would he be in Seattle?
I might leave him in Seattle. Yeah.
Okay. Oh man.
Or I might do. Where is he from canonically? I think it's like Liberty City or something.
No,
it's not Star.
Union City.
No, of course I'm going to blank right now.
Yep. In front of your hero.
Yes,
choking.
Talking about Green Arrow,
yeah.
As long as you keep the Van Dyke beard, that's my only. Unless you don't want to, that's fine. But
if he's going to have the Van Dyke beard, Seattle probably makes the most sense.
Yeah, see, he could pull it off that way. Yeah,
that's great. I mean, see, now I'm upset because if it doesn't happen, so do you have?
He does. He's Star City in Seattle.
Star City. Okay.
Yeah, in Seattle.
In regards to, I just want to touch on Blade Vampire Nation. Also, I thought that, and I think I read or watched an interview somewhere where you have a pitch in for possibly a 12 issue. I mean, is there any news on that, or is that something that's possibly in the works? Not,
it's
maybe
possibly in the works. It probably won't be a 12 issue mini, but I know that Marvel is planning a big vampire related event right now.
Okay,
so it'll probably tie into that somehow.
That would be.
Would you ever want to write for would you ever want to write Batman, the mainline Batman series?
I would totally take that. I would take that gig. I wrote a Batman Urban Legends story
a
little while ago, and I found I always find him kind of inspiring character to write, even though he's like in a lot of ways the antipode to Superman.
Yeah,
just because he is he lives mostly inside his head, and I think I'm gravitate towards those characters who their motivations are clear only really to themselves.
Yeah. People who say that they like Batman the best, I often think well, you just like gadgets a lot. I mean, and being rich. When you actually think
gadgets are way cool.
They are way cool, and he's got a nice car. But when you really think about Batman, it would be a hard space to occupy mentally.
See, for me, it's not that. It's that I find Batman interesting in just the contrast thing. Like, they're the exact opposite. Like, Superman is, like, Clark Kent is the person, and Superman is the superhero, or the secret identity. And for Batman, it's the opposite. Batman is who he is, and Bruce Wayne is the secret. Like, you know what I'm saying, as far as the flip-flopped roles? Like, I think he's at home in Batman as compared to, I think Superman's completely fine being, he is Clark. And he puts on the costume, and he's still just Clark, and so.
Yeah, I felt like my probably most belabored explanation of the difference between Superman and Batman came in Superman Space Age, when they both were sort of presented with the trolley car dilemma, and they had completely different answers of how they would resolve it.
For sure.
But I think both their answers made perfect sense within their own sort of logical framework.
Sure.
Can I ask one about with Red Sonja, which was your take on that was brilliant, and also it shows that you can just do a rousing action comic too. But how did you come to that? Did you seek that character out, or did Dynamite contact you? How did that come into play? Because it reinvigorated my love for the character.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I loved writing that run on Red Sonja. And it's weird because it's one that people rarely bring up in my sort of retinue of writing my career, and yet it's the one I've written the most issues of out of anything.
Yeah, 24
I've written more issues of Red Sonja than any other character or title. And so for me, I was talking to Dynamite, and they just had a list of like their properties that were becoming available, and I chose Red Sonja because not only because I admire the other writers who've been working who worked on Red Sonja, people like Gail Simone, Amy Chu or Michael Oeming, but also because I wanted to. I'm a huge fan. I'm fascinated by ancient history, and I wanted to tell a story rooted in ancient history through a sword and sandal like fantasy comic.
Yeah.
So what I did was I used Red Sonja as a launching point to tell the story of the Queen Tomyris, who was she was a queen of a steppes tribe called the Massagatai, and the Massagatai were attacked by Cyrus the Great, who was the most powerful man in the world, the Emperor of Persia, and her and her tiny tribe of steppes horsemen managed to defeat Cyrus the Great, and she ended up actually killing him. So I wanted to kind of tell that story, this little known story in ancient history, through the pages of Red Sonja.
It was great, and the way the portrayal of the Cyrus the Great character in Red Sonja was the humor is there too, along with all the action. It was awesome.
Well, thanks.
So did you, in regards to that, did you enjoy being on that one project for longer as compared to being able to switch it up? Or what kind of writer are you? Would you rather live inside a character? I mean, not even from the financial part of it. Guessing we can all assume that one is easier than the other. So taking that out of it, do you enjoy sticking inside a character's head, or do you like the moving around?
I think I like the moving around better. I like looking forward to new stories and knowing how a story is going to end when I start writing it. I think I prefer that, but there is something definitely to be said for just letting yourself marinate in a character for a couple years, because you get to tell stories. You get to have a whole issue, which is maybe about them, just walking the streets and looking at the people on the streets that they never noticed before. You can do that when you're writing 30 or 40 issues of a series in a way you can't if you're writing a 6 or 12 issue mini.
Yeah, you've got to bust it out, and you're like, here's all the info, blah, 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 and just push through it. Yeah, because I mean, when you have those long runs, like Detective or whatever, I mean, there are some issues where nothing happens, but it's character development setting up, well, here's where it's going to go 8 issues later. And I can totally see how being able to write a 6-issue story is definitely help. If you can tell an entire story in 6, you could definitely tell it, in 40. So I think it's a helpful skill set to have, I would imagine. I haven't written a book, but
by the time I'm done with Second Coming, it will probably take over as my longest run on a title. And the fact that it is going to be several volumes long allows me to do things like have entire issues which are just telling the story of a crusade, or telling a story of something that happened in the Bible, that flesh out the world of the characters rather than being the plot of the characters interacting themselves. And in fact, this is becoming sort of what I do now. Is every time there's a new series of Second Coming, the first issue is often almost has nothing to do with the current plot. It's like the second volume. The first issue was about Sunstar's origins and about how his parents had to send him away from Zirconia, much the same way that Superman's parents had to send him away. And then the fourth volume, which I'm writing now, the first issue tells the story of the Fourth Crusade, which is a crusade where they didn't even make it to the Holy Land because of financial problems. And they just ended up like raiding other Christian cities to make money to go on this crusade to liberate the Holy Land, and it just sort of petered out because they decided it was easier to raid the Christian cities and they carve off their own little kingdoms.
Well, it's like when Lionheart came back, he just robbed, across France, just robbing everything he could.
It's kind of a funny story, the story of the Fourth Crusade. But yeah, it's just these little things there that sort of set the theme for the following series. But you can do that when you're writing when you're writing on a trajectory, thinking, well, I've got like 60 issues to tell the story, right, as opposed to thinking, well, I gotta bang this story out in 6 to 12.
And is it difficult for you personally to write 4 books simultaneously, or are you able to compartmentalize them pretty easily and just work? I
like it better, actually. And I think I like it better because it's sort of like rotating your crops. You exhaust the soil when you're working on one series and nothing but. So it's nice to take a break, take a few days, a week to work on something completely different. And then when you come back to it, then it's like, oh yeah, all the problems you thought you were beating yourself up about, you had no solution to, suddenly seem easy.
Sure,
because you went and did something else and are now looking at it with fresh eyes.
And it could be even like from a standpoint of like maybe there aren't days that you're just not feeling creative. Maybe if you only have one thing you're doing, your block is on that one thing, not overall.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
that's my experience. Is that writer's block doesn't really exist universally. It's just you're stuck in a corner on that thing you're working on. But if you work on something else, you're not blocked at all. And just by virtue of taking a break from that one thing that was giving you trouble, your subconscious tends to like come up with solutions, tends to find a way out of the corner you painted yourself into when you go back to them.
For your work balance, how much time would you say you spend working on projects you already have on your plate as compared to working on pitches? Like, where do you find where do pitches come from, and then how do you pull those together and get them out there? Like, is it just something that happens, or do you sit down like you would sit down when you were writing to work on pitches, or is that just like the stuff you wake up in the middle of the night and just write down?
Well, it's a little both. When I do have an idea, like, oh, this would be a great story, I have like a file of like pitch ideas, and I would just write down like a sentence or two or a paragraph. Mm-hmm. And then when I'm thinking about what I want to do next, I'll go through that file and look at the things I think this is the best idea that I have in this file, or I can really think of like a number of things I would want to talk about while writing the story, and then I'll develop that into a fuller pitch. But I think I definitely spend more time now writing pitches than I used to. It used to be that I was just sort of waiting for new assignments, and I realized pretty quickly that's not really how the industry works, and it's not how you're going to do your best work. You're going to do your best stuff thinking proactively about what it is you want to be doing, and approaching editors and publishers with pitches than just waiting to see what's available.
And how is that first, if you can remember, how is that very first interaction, how was that set up? Like, did you write an email to somebody at DC or anywhere and be like, I want to write comics? Like, how did that start off? What's your story as far as how you got into it and broke into it?
No, I originally wanted to write prose. I wanted to write books.
Yeah.
But then DC contacted me and asked me if I'd be interested in writing a comic book, which I thought was always kind of, it was like out of the blue. And I thought, but that's a fascinating offer. So I thought about, they had pitched Prez to me, like this would be the comic, it'd be about the first teenage president. And I thought about whether or not, I felt like I could pull it off and do it justice. When I decided I could, I said, yeah. And I wrote them a little pitch about what I would do with the story. And they really liked that. And so that's how I got started. And then after that, they came to me with the Flintstones and Snagglepuss. So I thought, well, this is just the way comics work. It's like they will approach you with new jobs, as you're working. But I realized it's not really like that. I was in like a unique situation where, I was in the Hanna-Barbera stuff, and they had few people they felt like I was uniquely suited to the Hanna-Barbera stuff, so they would just keep coming back to me with Hanna-Barbera stuff. But most times, in most situations, you need to be thinking about what it is you are suited for, what you would be good at writing, and what you want to write, and be approaching editors and publishers about your own ideas. So when I started working in comics full time, like in 2018, that's what I had. That was the learning curve for me. It's like I had to learn how to like actually make pitches and to be proactive about contacting people with these pitch ideas that I thought I would be good for.
That's awesome. I mean, it sounds like it's I don't say it was easy, but I suppose as far as breaking in, them calling you first has got to be.
They have never.
Yeah, it was a not. It's not really a duplicable story for kids out there wanting to break into comics. I wouldn't advise just like going about your life and waiting for DC to call you,
because they haven't called me yet. I'm disappointed. So
yeah, I was very lucky in that regard. But I quickly realized that writing comics actually worked with my brain and my sort of storytelling way better than just writing prose. So I was lucky they found me. And also, you can make a living. I think it's not easy, but it's definitely easier to make a living working in comics than it is in like literary fiction.
Sure.
So before we get to the 5 questions to wrap up, because I know you gotta go, I just gotta do some fan stuff really quick. I gotta say, Business Dog might be the best idea in Western literature. Making Huckleberry Hound Faulkner is just it was mind blowing. And then Second Coming, and for people listening at home, if you're not reading Second Coming, it's just a wonderful, wonderful book. It can be faith affirming if that's what you want it to be. It can be heartwarming if that's what you want it to be. It can be topical. You get as much as you put in, or you can have all of those. So if you're not reading Second Coming, you should start now. That's all I had.
Before we get into the 5 questions, I'd like to ask him. No, you're good. I want to give you the opportunity, Mark, if you've got current things you're working on and things you want to push. I mean, I had mentioned it before, the bunk bed mishaps. I know you've got the Kickstarter coming up, but I don't know if you had a time frame on that, and then any other comics projects or anything like that you can reveal or whatever. I mean, I want to give this opportunity, A, because I want to know, and B, so does everybody else. So
yeah, well, thanks for bringing up the Kickstarter. I am doing my first ever book of my own cartoons, my own artwork on Kickstarter. The book is called Bunk Bed Mishaps. So if you go to Kickstarter and you search Bunk Bed Mishaps, it'll give you the link to the pre-launch, my Kickstarter pre-launch. The Kickstarter will go live in April.
Okay.
But there's also going to be a bunch of awesome rewards, like books from, rare books from my writing career, signed stuff, some artwork. So even if you're iffy on the idea of me drawing cartoons, you should probably still go on, because there'll be a lot of other cool stuff as well. And then another project I want to talk about, just because I feel like it is one of the best things I've ever done, and yet because I'm doing it in such a boutique publishing way, not many people seem to know about it, is Traveling to Mars, which tells the story of the first man to ever set foot on Mars, and he's chosen because he is terminally ill, so they don't have to worry about bringing him back. So it's a one-way mission to Mars, and he is telling the story of his regrets on Earth and about what's happening on the planet, and about what, everything he's going to miss now that he knows that he's basically a dead man on his way to Mars. And they just let me tell the story the way I wanted to tell it. There's no, laser battles or, car chases or anything. It's just sort of like a story about a person in their life and their regrets and, their hopes for the future, in 11 issues. And I'm just very proud of it. And I love the work that Roberto Melli is doing with it. I think it's next level, and I hope somebody really discovers them as a result of the series. So if you haven't already, please go out and check out Traveling to Mars.
It is a great, great book.
it is a great book.
If Mark Russell didn't sell you guys and you want to know what some guy thinks of it, I can tell you it is a great book.
in case you don't believe Mark,
Yeah.
here's Shayne.
You shouldn't believe me, because I'm a biased party.
It is-
I've got a stake
it's a
in this
great
fire.
So I think now is the time we'll wrap it up with 5 questions. The first one being, what comic, novel, or piece of literature had the biggest impact on you or changed how you viewed the world?
I think the biggest one was Ray Bradbury's The Martian Chronicles, because I read it when I was 12.
Yes.
And it sort of blew my mind that it was like commentary. It was like science fiction as commentary on our world, which I didn't understand yet. Pretty much all science fiction is.
Yeah.
But it also, he told the story with all these little tiny short vignettes, which was sort of the perfect introduction to literature for me, because it's like, I could just read 3 or 4 pages and it tells a whole story, and then I could stop. And then as I keep reading, these little stories aggregate into one big story. So I think it was a great sort of beginner's book. And I think it also heavily influenced the way I write, where I try to write in like little vignettes and little snapshots and have something worthwhile on every page, not just to rely upon some payoff at the end.
Thank you. That's awesome. And number 2, who are 3 of your favorite writers, authors of any genre?
Well, I think my favorite author of all time is Kurt Vonnegut. I've read all of his novels.
Yes.
Sort of like
Cool.
in my pantheon of all-time greats. Writing comics, I would say I'm a huge fan of Dan Clowes. He's probably someone that I'm, again, a completist. I've read everything he's written. And in the 90s, when I sort of rediscovered comics as an adult medium, it was because I was reading things, like 8-Ball and Madman by Mike Allred and Too Much Coffee Man by Shannon Wheeler. And it's kind of mind-blowing for me now to sit back and think, well, like, of those 3, I've worked with 2 of those guys.
That's got to be
awesome. I've done a comic with Mike Allred, and I did a couple of books with Shannon Wheeler. And I remember myself, like, in college in the 90s, just like reading that in my dorm room and being, little did I know.
Right. That's awesome.
And I finally got to read 8-Ball too. It just became available again, finally.
My third question is science fiction or fantasy? I think we already know where this is going to go, but
yeah, I'm more of a science fiction guy. But I think that really good fantasy, I think it really is just kind of like, there's nothing better than really top drawer fantasy, even though as a genre, I probably gravitate more towards science fiction.
Yes. For what TV show or movie is just your guilty pleasure?
Oh man, guilty. I am too old to feel guilty about much anymore. I just sort of lay it all out there.
That's awesome.
But I really enjoying the Last of Us, like everybody else on the planet is.
Yep.
And also we just watched the miniseries on John Stonehouse, the British member of Parliament who faked his own death.
Yeah.
Starring Matthew McFadden, and that was really good too.
Cool.
Thank you for that. And the last one is a little goofy, but who would you fan cast for a live action Harley Ivy movie, and what direction would it take? This is
oh wow.
This is for
man,
us.
I'm terrible at fan casting, because the first name that pops in my mind is like Margot Robbie, which is not fan casting at all.
They nailed it.
Yeah, they did nail that one.
Hard to argue with that. I think that I think would make a great Poison Ivy though is Aubrey Plaza.
Oh my God, yes.
Great idea.
Yes.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
And I think that their chemistry would be perfect too, where like Margot Robbie's sort of like the aggressive, over the top sort of
And Ivy would be dry,
extroverted one, and Aubrey Plaza would just be sort of like the opposite.
Mm-hmm. Did you watch her in
the moon to her sun?
Yeah. Did you watch The White Lotus with her in it?
Oh yeah, I love White Lotus.
It was fantastic. I love her. Well, thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you very much. Thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, we've had a wonderful time.
Great.
And hopefully we'd love to have you back at some point. And, we're going to keep on reading. We're going to keep on talking on the podcast. And, we're looking forward to your next projects coming out. And do you have an exact date for Bunk Bed Mishaps? Just, I know you said sometime in March. I just want to make sure that everybody knows so we can get on there and support
the Kickstarter goes live April 1st, and then the books should start hitting the mailboxes in May.
Okay.
May and
Wow,
June.
that's a quick turnaround. That's awesome. So you're done with it.
It's already the book is already together. It's just a question
Sure.
of getting the funding and then printing them.
That's awesome.
And
All right. Anything?
not to be a sycophant, but it really is a pleasure, Mr. Russell. It really was. Thank you.
Well, it was fun for me too. You guys should have me on when Traveling to Mars, the book, with the trade comes out.
Mark it down.
We absolutely will.
Down.
We will.
Thank you very much. And we'll
All
see
right.
everybody
Thank you,
again
everybody.
soon. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. We would love to thank Mark Russell one more time. We really enjoyed having him on. We enjoyed bringing him to you, and we look forward to having him on again. We'd like to take some time now and talk about his books more in depth, and then what we can offer you as a shop, help you get some of his stuff if you need it. But Shayne, why don't you lead us off?
Well, I didn't. They say don't meet your heroes, but I just did, and it was fantastic. So maybe do meet your heroes if they're awesome people.
And we can't, me and Craig anyway, can't stress enough that Shayne really is one of his biggest.
Legit.
No, we love his material. We love everything, but Shayne legitimately.
I mean, everybody, when you have an interview like this, you read and you brush up because you're going to be speaking with them, and Shayne didn't have to.
No.
So it's like one of those things.
Shayne went a step further and read his actual novels. Yes.
Yeah. And it was totally worth it. It was just as good as everything else he's done. I've not read a single issue of anything he's written where I was not touched or moved in some way. Yeah.
Because before we even talked about getting him on, Shayne was already pulling all of his books.
Yeah.
The Billionaire's Island, everything that comes across.
Yeah, my bad. Traveling to Mars. I stop people at gas stations and ask them about Mark Russell. Like I'm getting it out there. Like, you know.
I mean, that's true. I had to pick him up from jail a few times.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
It is. Yeah.
yeah.
So they always know he did the Mark Russell thing again.
Hiring prostitutes and just talking to Mark Russell for an hour. And,
hey, it's my hour. But I also think that people that are skeptical about the comic as an art form, the medium as a whole, giving them something like the Flintstones or Snagglepuss or Superman Space Age is a way to show them like what the medium can do.
And would you say, since you are as well read as you are with his material, which would you say is probably the most accessible as far as universally?
Flintstones. Not to sound boring, but there's a reason.
do you think that gives the best impression to readers about what his qualities are and what his abilities are?
It does. It tells you what he can do, while also still being. It's uniquely a Mark Russell story and uniquely a Flintstone story. 100% of both. And I think he knew that, though. I think he knew when he got a title like the Flintstones, it was a chance he had a platform, and he used it.
I love. I didn't mean to talk over you there, but I love what he did with the characters. They're not if you haven't read it before or haven't looked at it, if you think of Flintstones, you would think they'd be bumbling. They're it's kind of a callback to the '60s, but his interpretation of the characters are phenomenal. And
Fred's not dumb, and he's genuinely a good person.
Yes,
and above all, it's insightful and it's impactful, but it's also fun. It's fun when it is very fun, and it's hilarious when it has to be. And I'll say this: if you guys don't think that you can cry over two appliances and their relationship with each other, you're wrong.
And that was another thing that was a blast. It's been I grew up watching Flintstones and syndication and whatnot, but I had forgotten how huge a part animals play, because animals are everything.
Yeah,
animals
all the
are
appliances,
the stoplights, all the appliances and everything like that, and that's all written in.
The backhoes, everything.
Yeah, genius. It is a genius level write-in, and there are a few topics. I mean, you heard in the interview portion where we were giving props to DC as far as, this is a pretty, I don't want to say controversial, but
very progressive for DC to do something like this, I feel.
Yeah. I mean, there's not really, if you are a responsible, free-thinking, open-minded human being, able to read other possible viewpoints, this is one of the best books you could possibly read. It's always, I mean, you can tell that there are aspects where, I feel like Mark probably isn't big on, war or the colonization thing, which ties into the whole starting the civilization and the tree people and stuff.
Yeah, the Tree People War.
Right, but it's never unfair, and it's not like, it's not beating you over the head with a club. It's just like, this is a viewpoint, and then he does it in a funny way. The best way I can do it, line it up, is probably like a South Park episode. He does it in that same way, where
without the crudity, without.
Do you disagree, Shayne?
No, not at all. Not at all. I was just trying to think of how to word it, because
you have to read it to understand.
Yeah, and he does so much with each issue, but they work as a whole, and it works as this whole overarching story. Every time he does it, each issue is its own complete little thing. Like he's writing comic books the way like
God
Silver Age people would write.
dads.
God hates dads.
It's a wonderful
But all and then you realize how deep it is too when you actually read it, and all the jokes, all the little everything adds up to just a great experience, and it doesn't feel.
Yeah, no line is wasted, no idea is wasted. It's all
Every
there for a
panel
reason.
is full of little
Yeah, I say
jokes
And one of my favorite things was the realization of Bam Bam.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm not going to spoil it for you,
yeah.
but it was a beautiful part of the story. Did you have? I truly felt that, and I was like,
One after another. For me, I try to explain it to people like if you watch a Wes Anderson movie, there's more ideas in each frame
Yes.
than there are in most people's movies, and I
Yes.
think that's how I could describe the panels of a Mark Russell comic.
yes,
Well, and
There's so many
shout out
ideas in each panel.
to Steve Pugh as well.
Steve
oh my,
Pugh,
yes,
Like
he wasn't really on my radar until I read Flintstones, and now I look for this guy's stuff. The artwork's so gorgeous and so suited to the material too.
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's like the Flintstones, but they're somewhat drawn like superheroes ish.
Yeah.
Well, Fred is just a big. I mean, he's just a big dude, but he's not dumb.
But he's not the biggest dude.
No,
in
he's
this
not either.
But
There's
it's got its foot in both worlds, though, where it's the Hanna-Barbera Fred and it's the comic book Fred. Like it skirts it so well. Also, we should probably talk about Snagglepuss, just to show you guys like how versatile Mark Russell is. Snagglepuss, it's a prequel to the cartoon, and Snagglepuss plays essentially Tennessee Williams. He's an openly gay, very successful playwright in the 50s during the McCarthy era, and his best friend is Huckleberry Hound, written as Faulkner, and
Yeah.
and again, but it's never precious. It's never twee. It is like if somebody told you that at a cocktail party, you might roll your eyes or you think it was brilliant. But I'll tell you what, it is
read it. I dare you.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
It is so perfectly executed. It's so again weirdly suited to the character of Snagglepuss. Like everything works out so well, and it gives you an understanding of like the time period and a better understanding of Snagglepuss. I can't think of another comic that could do something like that.
And these items, like as far as if these known, properties aren't your cup of tea, coming out very shortly is Superman Space Age, which everybody knows Superman, and we discussed it with Mark. He understands Superman. It is a fantastic book.
Plus, the art is singular in its vision of telling. It is a beautiful book, and it's
The whole package.
Michael and Laura Allred do the art for Mark Russell. And Mark Russell, who I think is the best writer currently writing in comics, his favorite character is Superman. So what if, who arguably is the best writer writing a Superman comic that he could do, and it's that. It's a perfect distillation of the character. It gets everything that you would want it to get, and it's just a cracking good read on top of all that.
Which I believe we actually sold out on these books,
Yes.
even in house. But
Yes, we did.
The hardcover, which is going to include the volume 1, 2, and 3, which is the entire story.
They're oversized.
yes, they are.
They're oversized. Will be out within the next month or two, which we'll have them up on the website.
Yeah.
If you guys want to pre-order them, or we'll have them in store if you guys are local. But can't recommend enough that read. And then if you just got done listening to the podcast, I'm crossing my fingers that this Green Arrow book.
Boy, I mean,
Happens.
even though we all froze on Star City, but if just the idea, like I just told you, it's the best comic now that has ever been written is the unwritten Green Arrow by Mark Russell. This is the one I'm looking forward to most.
The potential, I was unaware that Marvel was thinking about a potential vampire event.
If you guys have not read his Blade,
Vampire Nation.
Vampire Nation, it's a terrific one shot.
The premise behind that is that Dracula actually owns property, in the mid,
Yeah.
out. Is it Russia? Or
They
where
have an
is it?
autonomous nation, and he's essentially the sheriff.
He's the sheriff
the nation.
of the nation.
Yes, and for a character who's like Blade is such a great character, and he's so cool, and everybody loves him, but he's been kind of underserved as far as good comic material. And Mark Russell, in one issue, he solved that.
Because I think he fell out of favor a little bit after it's been a while since we've had a Blade movie. They keep talking about redevelopment, and Mahershala Ali is going to play him, but I feel like it was just on the downslope a little bit. But he breathed.
Mark Russell,
It was a nice
thrives in that space, and also I want to push Mark Russell's Ahoy work. It's a small publisher that he has a little bit more freedom, so he can really let it go and tell the stories that he wants to tell, like unfettered. He's got 3 titles currently: My Bad,
Second
Coming, and
Traveling to Mars.
A billionaire.
Billionaire Island.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Billionaire.
Billionaire Island. As far as the most, I can't tell which one is the most fun. You can tell he's cracking himself up as he writes all three of these titles, but they're all, again, there's a sharper edge to all three of them, but there's also the same amount of heart in all of them. The Second Coming is about Jesus. He comes down to Earth and he lasts 33 years, and his dad, the Almighty, thinks he needs some toughening him up, so he sends him to Earth now, and has him become roommates with our Superman, essentially, so that he can toughen the boy up. And while he's here, Jesus of Nazareth gets to see how we're living right now. And again, it's never preachy. It's never, again, precious. It's so well executed. It's so smart. It's so funny, and it's really it's affirming. It's really great comic.
And Shane told us off camera that he's starting a brand new Mark Russell fan service. So if any of you guys have questions, you can.
I would.
Fan club president.
I would
Shayne Pace.
start the fan club for.
It'd be worth it too.
It would. And it's again, he was such a gentleman and so nice and just on the ball. It was really great.
And it is it's raining like
it is pouring.
It's going insane. So if you hear that, it's the rain in the background. But also, if you anybody out there, if you have problems getting his material or getting any of his stuff, you can look to us for that. We can help you with any of these titles we've talked about. We can get them for you. We ship. So you can look for us at www.thercade.com. Or you can give us a call, and we will help you find any of his materials and help get them in your hands so you can be a better person.
I say add the Ahoy comics to your poll, and add the Arcade.
Yeah. I mean,
Make
it
that
does
your
not.
shop.
It's easy. Before we even had the shop, we were the type of adventurous comic readers. Like, we would take a chance on books and things like that. And so these aren't the books that, you don't walk in as buying only Nightwing and then look at these books and pick them up. However, if anybody's going to give you that, payoff as far as taking a chance, it's going to be Mark.
Yeah.
They're good books.
And I've said this before, and this is not, there's no judgment in this at all. I feel in my own personal life that the older I got, and especially the last 5 or so years, I started reading a lot more independent books because I felt like they had more mature subject matter, and they helped me grow as a human, and I was maturing myself a little bit. So I was buying a lot of these, and I was reading a lot more independent books. And Mark, he
meets you where you're at. That's for sure.
He knocks it out of the park every time.
Yeah,
he makes it, and it's not like it's a social. You're going to have a good time. You're going to see. And it might open your eyes about this or that problem that he's written about, but he does it in such a great fashion that it's not beating you over the head with it.
Yeah, and like I said, his Red Sonja, I mean, sure, it's historically based, as he brilliantly expressed, but it's also, it's just a thumping good time. It's just a fun Red Sonja book.
You don't win an Eisner without mass appeal.
No.
So
you don't win an Eisner usually without talent, he has it in spades.
Yeah, and if you can get your hands on Not All Robots, it's not easy to find anymore, but that's what he won his Eisner for, and it is just brilliant.
Fantastic. It is in trade form. You can get it. So, all right.
Is it?
Yeah,
man,
they got it.
Gotta hunt it. Anyway,
and also another shout out. When we spoke with Mark actually afterwards, and that bunk bed mishaps that's launching on Kickstarter on April 1st. We're planning on supporting that at a retailer level. So if those of you out there are interested in his upcoming work, you should be able to get it at the Arcade as well. We don't have any insight as far as what the retailer packs look like as far as that goes, but we do have every intention of supporting it. So also, you're going to check on the website or give us a call concerning that stuff, and that'll be April 1st when we have a better idea of what that's going to entail.
And it's no April Fool's. It's legitimately, that's when it drops. It's not like we're not trying to trick anybody.
There's just some kismet to everything that Mr. Russell does.
There is.
And with that, Matt, do your thing.
Everyone out there, please, please, please support your local comic book stores. They are not doing as well as you think they are, and they need all the help you can get. So once again, thank you for being with us. Thank you for Mark Russell once again.
Yep.
We hope to have him on again. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
And from all of us here, we'll see you soon.
See you.